So I saw a thread about the creepiest things you've ever done. But it got me thinking, what's the creepiest thing that's ever happened to you? I was 9 at the time, sitting in my parents' car in a parking lot of Kmart. Being my inquisitive self, I would look around the lot at other cars and the goings and comings. Soon enough, a red pickup truck pulled up beside me with a quite disheveled looking man sitting behind the wheel. I just stared at him because he had a look of great sadness within his eyes. He stared blankly at the dash for a while. After some time he starts yelling and then breaks down into tears. Immediately after breaking into tears, he reaches into the glove compartment and pulls out a pistol. He checks the magazine and points it into the roof of his mouth and starts screaming names. Names of his kids, I guess. He does this for a few more minutes until he realizes a 9-year-old boy is staring lockjawed at him. He just stares at me with the gun in his lap and then smiles and blows me a kiss. He left sometime after the staring contest. My dad came back from the store and asked why I looked so pale. I didn't say a word until we got home, and I immediately vomited into the toilet, feeling so nervous about the entire thing. I broke up with a girl and told her no, I don't still want to be friends or talk to her or anything. 2 months later she burned her house down so that I would talk to her again. She came up to me in school and told me that she did it because she missed me and wanted me back. My girlfriend is a sleepwalker. It only really comes on when she's incredibly exhausted or stressed out. We had just come back from Tokyo. First night back in our bed. I got up to take a leak, and when I turned around, she was standing in the door. Eyes semi-open but glazed over. Face slack. She surprised me. But I thought she just needed to use the bathroom. But she just stood there and wouldn't let me pass until I spoke to her. Hey. We have to get out of here. They're coming for us. The hairs on my neck immediately stood up. The way she said it was so cold and mechanical. It was like it wasn't even her voice. That's when I realized she was sleepwalking. Go back to bed. Okay. And she spun around and shuffled off to bed. I know it doesn't sound like much, but it was so creepy. It's like she was possessed. I didn't even get back in the bed with her. I went into the living room and slept on the couch. AOL chat room when I was 15. Some douche starts douching. Assaulting everyone. I found cyber fights entertaining back then. So I go with it. After the while, he tells me my address, full name, and a link with a picture of me on it from my old school's website that I didn't even know about. And said he's going to kill me. I machoed up saying bring it. And slept with a weapon handy. And still do. He never showed up as far as I know. And I'm pretty sure I'm still alive. When I was 17, I had to do a work-study program for a charity that dealt with retarded people in their 20s and 30s. I worked with a 34-year-old retarded man named Ryan. I spent 3 weeks training him to do simple person-to-person interactions so he could be a Walmart greeter or something. I came home after a session to find police at my house as well as ambulances in the driveway. The cops told me my mother was fine, but she had been attacked and cut on her right arm. It turns out that the police were called when Ryan couldn't be contacted. It turns out he had been masturbating to pictures of me. He wanted my picture to show his mom or something, and he had become obsessed to the point where he walked into my house when I was gone with a knife. Probably to attack me. The most up part of the story is that while he was obviously mentally disabled, it turns out that he wasn't mentally retarded but rather posing as a retarded person to meet high school boys. The band teacher at my high school hid in a towel room and masturbated to me and another guy showering just about every day until he was caught. When I was 15, I got a job at the local grocery store as a deli clerk. One day this older guy who was a semi-regular customer apparently decided to give me a gift, one of those giant teddy bears you get as a prize at the Midway. It was really dirty, and there was a hole in between its legs into which he had placed a gigantic black. The store manager called the cops and banned the guy from the store. But it was weeks before I stopped looking over my shoulder on my way home. I lived in the Middle East when I was in high school, and one day as I was walking home from school and this old Arab man in an old Mercedes pulled up like he was lost and rolled down his windows and leaned out like he was about to ask for directions. So I walked over and he asks me if there's a massage parlor nearby. That immediately struck me as odd, so I said I didn't know and walked on. He kept up with me and said that since there wasn't a massage parlor around, maybe I could give him a massage. I ignored him and started walking faster, and he starts offering me a lift home. I tell him to leave me alone and keep walking, but he just keeps following me, so I had to duck into the nearest house pretending it was mine and hid in their garden until I was sure the guy was gone, and then continue on my way home. I am still suspicious of men and old Mercedes to this day. It was my 16th birthday and my stepmom and I went to go get massages. After filling out some paperwork, they told us that there were no available females to do our massages. I'm a girl, so we both said we would be okay with guys. Through the whole massage the masseurs kept complimenting me and it was just generally awkward. He also asked how old I was, 16, and he said he was like 26. At the end of the massage he asked me for my phone number. It was super creepy. But I didn't want to be rude, so I just said I didn't live in the state. Few weeks later, I get a bunch of missed calls on my phone with messages from the guy. He got my cell phone number off the release paperwork I filled out when we got to the massage place. I never returned any of his calls, but he continued to call me every so often for the next few months. When I was about 9, I was outside in front of my apartment with my brothers 3 and 6. We were sitting on a blanket having a present picnic. We see this guy in a baby blue van drive by. At first we think nothing of it, but then he proceeds to drive by 3 or 4 more times. We notice he stops the van and he is staring at us. He waves us over to the van. I got freaked out and grabbed my brothers and went into the house and locked the door and told my mom what happened. Later on that night when we were watching the news, the guy we saw earlier was on the news for kidnapping a kid in our neighborhood. Creepy could have been us. I am a female who worked at GNC a couple years back and I had one kind of creepy encounter while I worked there. This 45-50ish year old walks in, and I give the usual full stop. Full stop. How can I help you? Full stop. Full stop. Yada yada. Well, the guy ends up giving me his entire life story of how he lost his wife and kids because of alcohol and how he's turning over a new leaf in life. Also, I was pretty sure he was high drunk during this one-sided conversation. Full stop. Full stop. And it took forever for him to leave. About 2 hours after he leaves, the store phone rings, and my manager picks it up. Full stop. Full stop. Then he hands the phone to me. This same weirdo had memorized my name from my name tag and looked up the store phone number just to ask for me by name, tell me I was cute, and ask me to go to the pool at his health club with him. Keep in mind that I only looked about 16 at the time. Full stop. Full stop. I told him no thanks, obviously, and that I was leaving town forever. Lol. My manager was more freaked out about it than I was, though he thought it was my dad on the phone or something, but when he realized it was some old creep he wouldn't let me close the store by myself for a while after that. My friend and I were downtown one day and decided to eat lunch at a shitty food court in some old mall. Most of the places were closed down except a Subway and a non-chain pizza place. We each ordered a slice of pepperoni and a fountain drink from the man behind the counter. The first thing that was weird was that he wasn't wearing a uniform, just plain clothes. The second thing that was off was that he charged us both 2 completely different prices, despite the fact that we each ordered the same thing. What we each paid was less than the listed price for our items on the menu. My friend and I laugh about it, eat our food and go on with our day. Half an hour later and we both sit down in a hotel lobby and each end up falling asleep at roughly the same time and waking up a good hour later. We're both freaked out that we would each fall asleep for no reason and both noticed that we felt pretty shitty. A few hours later we decided to get dinner at the Subway at the food court. As we enter we notice that there are 2 new, freaked out looking people working at pizza place. They both are wearing uniforms. At the other exit of the food court, on the opposite side, we see paramedics taking a gurney to an ambulance. Strapped to the gurney is the man that served us our pizza. Janitor was mopping up some kind of mess in front of the pizza place. We both have no clue what had happened and were too weirded out to even want to know. Ask the people at the pizza place what the hell had happened. I was in bed one night, drifting off in the darkness of my bedroom. I couldn't quite get to sleep though. The weather was warm and my room was getting a little stuffy, so I went to open my window up and let some air in. I went back to bed, staring at the ceiling, hoping I would fall asleep out of sheer boredom. That was when I heard the sound downstairs. Now I wasn't yet asleep, and thinking that it could be a burglar or something, my heart started thumping. You know the feeling when fight or flight kicks in. When I was younger, I went on work experience at my granddad's sheet metal work factory. One of my best memories of us bonding was when we both made an axe at the workshop, which he let me take home. So I reached for this axe, this little hand axe I had made years ago, and creeped out of my room in the nude. There's that sound again, this time closer. It was dark and I didn't want to alert the burglar, so I stood at the top of the stairs, in the nude, in the dark and with this little hand axe raised shoulder height. I had no idea what I was going to do with it. Could I really have killed or maimed someone with it? I don't know. Anyway, I hear these quiet footsteps moving up the stairs. Whoever it was really didn't want to be heard. Whoever it is, wherever it is only a few steps away from me now. I'm aware of it, but it's not aware of me. 3. Closer. 2. Closer still. 1. I switched on the light and with my hand axe held high, screaming at the top of my lungs, I am met with another naked man. Fear of God seared on his face. Also screaming. My mother's friend, whom she had been seeing without me knowing for months, after she broke up with my father. I am amazed how he didn't fall backwards down the stairs. Looking back at this though make me laugh. 2 naked men screaming at the top of a staircase. One with a hand axe. Both of us almost ourselves with fire. TLDR, I nearly killed someone at the top of my stairs with my self-made hand axe. In the nude. Creepy at the time, but hilarious in hindsight. When I was about 7, I was at a store, and I was looking at little packets of confetti on the bottom shelf. I felt someone standing directly behind me, and when I looked up, some man had his out right behind my head. It scared the crap out of me. I ran to find my mother, but I wouldn't tell her what happened. I had totally forgotten about this until I read this thread. Now I have to repress it all over again. Thanks a lot, man. I was celebrating my friend's birthday one night down on a nude beach. We're not nudists, it's right in the backyard of my school. I'm walking down the beach with my friends, and suddenly, a silhouetted figure walks at our same pace about 15 feet away, then 10 feet away. At 5 feet, we notice he's not wearing any pants and he's stroking something. We walk for about 30 seconds and notice it's his erect penis that he's stroking. Plus he's staring at us. This point, we're on the offensive and hedging into our pantsless penis pleasuring predator's comfort zone. We walk so close that he gets uncomfortable and goes closer to the waterline. We eventually herd him into the water, at which point he said 2 words. Go away. And we promptly do. He leaves us alone and we him. Then we proceed to never speak of that moment again. Girl that was stalking me for years sent me this text message. I walked into your house this morning. I brought the gun from our end table. Your blood was strewn across the walls. They'll find you on your bathroom floor when I'm done. Those are a day to remember lyrics, but still extremely unsettling, and probably the creepiest thing that's happened to me. I was living in San Diego in a large apartment complex. I said hi to a random guy out walking his dog while walking to the shared laundry. Next morning I found a note under my windshield wiper from the guy offering a discreet BJ and his apartment number. The creepy part was he knew which vehicle was mine. I moved shortly after for unrelated reasons. I've had a few creepy things happen, but this one sticks out for some reason. I broke into an abandoned trailer in the woods when I was a kid with a couple friends. We never saw any cars in the driveway or signs of people living there. There were warning signs everywhere and a bunch of papers on the door saying it was protected and the consequences of being caught breaking in, etc, etc. After breaking through the boarded up windows we found a bunch of guns, stuffed animals and pictures with only the same little kid in them. That trailer is still there. Okay. Well, this one was kind of my fault. Not using a throwaway. I'm kind of ashamed. As a 12-year-old I discovered masturbation. I had done it almost ritually every day for years. 2 years. Until one day. I always did it on the second floor. With my computer. My house faces another house. Edit. And the houses were parallel. Apart only 20 or so feet. And their window was slightly lower than mine, but my window and the neighbor's window were parallel, on the second floor. And in my childish thinking, I didn't think people would look into my room midday. I was quite wrong. Here's a visual of what it was like. http://com/41noi. PNG. The neighbors, the adults, who lived in that house were never home. It was always just their kids and a babysitter. Well, one day the little girl who lives there came to my house while I was at school to play with my little puppy who she saw outside the other day. The little girl asked, "Where is your son?" and my mom, confused as how this little girl knew who I was, replied, "You mean choir nerd?" The little girl said, "Yay. I like to watch him in his room. He does weird things." Upon further questioning, my mother discovered she's been watching me for about 2 years. She was maybe 10 at the time. My neighbors wouldn't look at me anymore. Luckily they moved shortly thereafter. So what's the most awkward thing that's ever happened to me? I had a 10-year-old girl peeper as I jerked it every day. For 2 years. Edited for clarity. I was in my room with the window open one night when I was about 10. Playing video games when all of a sudden I hear the creepiest laugh ever directly outside of my window, which overlooks our porch. It sounds like whoever it is right to the side of my window as I see nobody there. But I am still freaked out enough that I go downstairs where my family is watching television. A few years later, we catch our creepy old neighbor walking around our property late at night, and this leads to several encounters involving the police. One day, after my father almost beats this guy to death for shooting our dog, I hear him laugh and immediately recognize this laugh as the one I heard that night. Seriously. It was one of those old, haunting, toothless-mouthed laughs that evil rednecks have in horror films right before they end murder somebody. Just full of maliciousness and hatred. Just thinking about it now is kind of creeping me out. Thanks Reddit. A few years ago a show ran called Crime Investigation Australia, which was a surprisingly well made series about famous Australian killers and the process of bringing them to justice. I got really into it and spent a lot of time ruminating about how horrible it would be to be kidnapped and murdered. When you were powerless to stop it because they had tied you up or something. Well, cut to me waking up in a daze. Completely disorientated and with no idea where I was. I look around. And I'm in a blank white box with no doors or windows. Sound starts to filter into my head and I realize I can hear a roaring car engine. The car takes a turn and I slam into the wall of the box. It hits me. I'm being kidnapped. I start pounding on the walls and screaming for help. After less than a minute the car grinds to a halt and I hear footsteps moving along the side of the vehicle. A camouflage door opens and a policewoman is standing there with a stern look on her face. Turns out I blacked out at an end of exams party and passed out on the sidewalk before I got home. 2 lovely policewomen stuck me in a paddy wagon and spent the next hour driving me around trying to find my house. My ID still said I lived in a dorm, but I'd moved off 6 months earlier and the Raz they had no idea of my new address. The kidnapping was just me coming to in the back of the paddy wagon. In the end, they got through to one of my friends on my phone. One of the few who weren't too shit-faced to say my address, and dropped me back at my place. Considering it would have saved them masses of time and hassle just to throw me in the drunk tank overnight. I was hugely grateful and sent their station a very sincere thank you letter. At the aquarium when I was still in elementary school, there was an exhibit on plankton. With binocular microscopes. I was looking into one of the microscopes. Suddenly my hand is yanked from the side of the microscope and my hand instantly feels warm and slimy. I look up to see a retarded girl holding my hand in her mouth. I cannot adequately describe my reaction in bullet points. It was about 1 AM and I walked to a casino across the street from a bar to take her and sober up a bit. I was taking the escalator upstairs when this old guy, 60 plus, walks up to me and tells me about this room he's got upstairs. And how I'm invited to come up with him. I decline. And at the top of the escalator I make a beeline to the bathroom and into a stall. I come out of the stall. And he's standing there at a urinal looking at me. I know, facing me. With his in his hand.